A new website is hoping to fill a gap for those that might need help in our city. Hikana.org offers a place for people to look for emergency shelter and food programs or find volunteer opportunities if they're looking to make new friends. It's a one-stop shop for finding out more about community organizations. Samuel Epiphany is behind the project, and he joins me now to find out more. Good morning, Samuel.
Good morning, Adam.
So what made you want to create this webpage?
So my family and I moved into North Central about a year ago, and the very next day after we moved in, someone tried to break into our home, and we called the police and they didn't show up. And over the year that we've lived in North Central, there are a number of troubling things that I witnessed and began reaching out to community service organizations. And one such conversation led to the issue of loneliness and isolation in Regina. And I have a website and a web development background, and I thought that I could do something to help connect people that are lonely and isolated with people, like generally with the community around them. And it turns out that volunteering is like an excellent way to do this because on the one hand, there is not as much tension when someone is invited to volunteer rather than like, hey, here's a website, like meet some random people, like if it's volunteering, then you're going to volunteer and you have the opportunity to see the same faces, like more or less whenever you go and have that kind of positive impact in the community as well.
So when you mentioned, things you're noticing, were you noticing that people just didn't have things to do, that they were looking for something to do, that you needed to create some community or build some connections?
Well, initially I was just looking for what I could do to help. So initially I just wanted to help the North Central community, but I met a lovely resource counselor at the Regina Public Library who mentioned that there's actually a bigger problem that's more citywide. And that's how I got into trying to help with loneliness and isolation.
So you added emergency shelters, foods, employment services as well to the site. Tell me about that.
Right. So after the CTV interview, I began receiving emails from people talking about winter and how people typically get stranded. And a lady recommended that I add the emergency shelter services. So what we have on hikana.org now is a map showing more or less all the emergency shelter services in Regina. And we also have another that shows all the different places that you can go to get food support if like you have no food.
So has this been a lot of time and effort, energy creating this resource?
Yeah, it was. So my wife and I recently had our second born, and I had about like a week to decide whether or not I wanted to work on this. So I did about 7 to 8 days of 15, 16-hour days in order to get the site up and running before we got our second born.
So you mentioned that people reacted, you did an interview and you had some attention and you've talked to folks in the community. What kind of feedback and reaction have you gotten?
Since the interview aired, we have about 35 signups for volunteer activities and somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000 people that have visited the website. And what I would really love to do is if I could work with Regina Transit. I have these posters that have a QR code on them. And if you scan them, they could show you all the places where you could find emergency shelter. So like, the bus stops that are sheltered, people typically go there during the winter if the bus is delayed or you miss the bus. And I have those posters ready. And if I could just work with someone to get them printed and put up, then anyone who needs shelter can find shelter whenever.
What have you learned about the city? You talked about a bit about what the need is out there, but what have you learned through working on this?
There are a shockingly large number of people that are doing things to help. So we have, with the volunteer programs and the community service organizations, probably upwards of 70 listings on the website. And I think hikana.org has the largest database of volunteer programs in Regina. And there's just so much to do, but it's just a lot of these programs don't really get the awareness that they need.
What are a few examples?
So we have, there's an organization called the YWCA. I remember because it's like YMCA.
Yeah.
So I originally thought like, this is YMCA. And then I noticed the logo was different and everything is different. And they actually do a lot to help women in the city. And they have different kinds of programs. They have like these emergency shelters that are for women that are experiencing violence and different kinds of programs available. And I had never heard of them like ever. So this was the first time that I got to know like they existed and the work that they do.
What would you like to see come out of this? What would be an outcome that you would be hopeful for?
Well, so like we have AI, and there's this talk about how AI will be like your therapist and your friend and everything. But I think there is value in people actually having connections with the people that live around them, and like the actual local community. And that's why we have a heavy focus on volunteering, because it gets you involved with the people like in your immediate vicinity, and like not like like social media here, someone follow their page and like their profile, but like actually meeting people and speaking with them.
Do you have a volunteer experience? Is this something that you thought maybe you needed more of a spotlight on it?
Well, prior to this, I had volunteered, but it was mainly a church-based program. So there was a church up in North Regina that would have bagged lunches and would make sandwiches, and I had volunteered for that before.
What you mentioned the AI and people, needing connection and meeting folks. Since the pandemic, I think there's been talk about this. We've talked about this on the show, that people have maybe lost connection, that they're more withdrawn, they're more staying inside, maybe staying in their own bubble. Do you think that has caused some of this sense of maybe lacking a community, or people needing to get reacquainted with their neighbors and one another?
Yeah, so the thing about meeting people is there's a lot of tension and hesitance when it comes to approaching people, and if you know no one I spoke with the Open Door Society. They help people that are new to Regina and the province largely, and a lot of these people have absolutely no one. So they're here and they don't have anyone, and they don't know really how to make that kind of connection. So with the volunteer program, it's it removes a lot of the the hesitation of approaching people, and like if you're an introvert, it's like much easier to do than like putting yourself out there and meeting new people.
You mentioned making a connection with Regina Transit. Are there any other groups that you'd like to connect with on this project?
For now, Regina Transit is the big one that we are looking for, because I know what it's like to miss the bus and to be out in the cold, either because it was delayed or something else. So if you have nowhere to go, like that's a really difficult situation to be in. So that's why I was thinking of working with the transit. But otherwise, we have a map that shows all the places that you can go to find food support as well. And if there's anyone that's interested in using those resources, I would really be happy to help.
Samuel, great to meet you, and best of luck with the project.
Thank you.